Welcome back to the Forensic Detailing channel. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button, guys. In this video, you're going to learn everything, and I mean everything about polishing pads or buffing pads, as our American brethren call them. And we're going to be reviewing these Zvizzer Thermo Pads, which are all about, they're called thermo pads because they're supposed to withstand heat more and last. I think it's up to 5 times or maybe 4 times longer than normal pads do, so other pads wear out. Now, I bought this thermo pad kit. It was knocking around. It was knocking around about 3 or 4 months ago. And all of the online guys had it. And it was on sale for 36 quid for 6 pads. So you're paying £6 a pad, which is incredibly cheap. I should have bought it back then. Ian from UK Detailing was telling me about these pads. Anyway, I didn't bother. Now they've all sold out. I found one place that I've got a couple of boxes left, GCA or something like that, and I bought this box. Okay, but this deal is never coming back. It was to introduce the launch of these pads. Now these pads normally will cost £11 each, I think. You know, for these 125mm. They go bigger up to 150mm for the big 6-inch pads that some people use. They're about 14 quid. But the cool thing is they also go down all of the size ranges down to the little spot pads, you know, so the price diminishes. So you can get the full range. What are the difference with all these foam pads? Well, it's the density of foam. The pore size looks to be consistent, although you can't really tell, can you? But the density is definitely different. And on the back of the box, they list the hardness, 20 kPa. What is that? That's the amount of kilos per area or something, the amount of pressure. So the higher that number is, the stiffer the pad. And the stiffer it is, the more you can push into it and cut. But like I say, the first very interesting point is that normally these cutting pads have much bigger pores because you're removing more material with stronger cutting compounds, and the bigger pores are less likely to cake up. So why haven't they done that? Interesting. John, what is the construction quality like on these pads? Well, first of all, these are European made. Zvizzer, I believe, are a manufacturer of pads. That's what they do, and they supply to people behind the scenes, I believe, but they also make their own pads. So you're going to the source to get your pads, which is quite important. The quality looks really good, you know, the cut quality. I've been through every single pad because that's what I do, and I show you everything. There's just one defect on one pad, which is just a cutting thing. It's just not quite cut that little bit, so you're going to get a little tag knocking around. All the polish will fill into that. The rest of them are all flawless. The cut quality on the outside seems pretty decent. Okay, so that's the pads. Heavy cut, you know, slightly less heavy cut, medium cut, polishing, finishing. This very soft pad has virtually no resistance in it, so you'd use that maybe for waxing or, you know, very final finishing or spreading product. Okay, so we've covered price now, guys. Really, really important. That was a bargain. And I should have gone and bought 10 boxes because you're basically paying half price. You're paying like wholesale price. I bet some people did go out and just clear the lot because that's really cheap. Really cheap. Like whenever they do deals like that, you've got to be all over it. So I've missed the trick there. Okay, we talked about price. Important, size range, okay? Very important that Zvizzer cater for the entire range. What do you mean size range? You see over there in the distance, there's like a little mini nano polisher with little 1-inch spot pads and 2-inch spot pads, and then 3-inch pads, and then 5-inch pads, and you can go all the way up to 6-inch. So I want any pad manufacturer to supply me with the complete range. Well, of course they would, John. That's what they do. They're pad manufacturers. No, hardly any ranges are full because, like, most of the time they just want to give you one pad, like the 5 or 6-inch pad. But times have moved on. We now have spot polishing, you know, much more popular with all this detailing stuff. This wasn't around like 10 years ago, these little spot pads. Very rare. So Zvizzer are a German company, I believe, or European company, whatever. They're specialists in pad making, basically. Historically, we looked at some of the Zvizzer pads about 5 years ago. And the cool thing about their pads was obviously the complete range of sizes. It was also the price. They were a lot cheaper than other pads. Their normal cone foam pads, when I did the video ages ago, were about 6 quid or something like that, 6 or 7 quid. They're about 8 quid now, but that's still cheaper than market. That's for like a 125mm medium cutting pad. I just did some quick turbo research. So Zvizzer have always been decent for price. Now is the very important information. John, what pads should I use? Just cut to the chase. What pads should I use? Well, everyone's got a different opinion on this. And when people ask me what pads should I use, I tend to tell them what I use. I use Flex. That's the Flex Power Tool company pads, because I tend to use the Flex polishers. Well, not exclusively, but I went and got a load of these pads ages ago, and I've never really worn them out or anything. You know, I look after them. They're used, but I really look after them. Now, these pads are very similar to Scholl Concepts pads. They're in the same foam. Who knows? Maybe Scholl make them for Flex. I don't think Flex make everything. You know, they make all their power tools, but maybe they don't make their pads. The thing about the Flex pads is they don't have any of this stupid choppy malarkey, which just weakens the surface. It's supposed to be for cooling. It does nothing, those choppy things. They do have it in, I believe, they're green pads. Yeah, they got the choppy, but I very rarely use these green pads. I use the purple pads for most of my cutting, unless you really want to go at the paint. Even their purple pads on the Scholl range, which is the same foam, have been choppy. I do not like the choppy. And there is a white spider pad, which is very similar to the green spider pad in the Scholl Concepts range. The thing with these Scholl Concepts and these Flex pads is they're slightly more rubbery than other pads, and they last a hell of a lot longer. The downside is they're expensive, and I think these pads are about 14 quid each, versus the Zvizzer, you know, 11 quid for the 125mm. Don't quote me on those prices, they're always moving. These pads are expensive, that's the downside, they're very good. Then you also have the Rupes pads, which are widely used. Again, you can get them in absolutely every size range. You know, you can even get the little nano ones, 3-inch ones, nano polishers, big ones, 6-inch, you know. You can get them in wool, microfiber, whatever you like. But they're yellow, the Rupes yellow, you can get good trade deals on those. And I think they used to be about 8 or 9 quid. They might be a little bit more than that now, I don't know. So they were quite cheap as well. And of course, you've got this Rupes yellow wool and Rupes blue wool, which I think is really good. That's so good for cutting, and that's good for actually single staging. The yellow finishes out really well and cuts a little bit. It finishes out as well as their white, I find, so you can skip the white foam if you want to. Anyway, so I used to say to people as a rough thing, if you want to go expensive, go Scholl or Flex. If you want to go a bit cheaper, go Zvizzer or Rupes. And I've been saying that in the comments for the last 5 years. And that's how I've always felt about it. Okay, it just depends what you've invested in. Once you've spent the money, you're stuck, aren't you? So look how many Flex pads I've got, all the little tiny ones, all these. You know, I've got some Geon pads there. I've got loads of other Flex pads. Got loads of Rupes pads, and there's some microfiber towels. And I've now got some more that I'll use. And I still use those little Scholl ones every now and then. I try to keep my Flex ones clean. Okay, let's get back to these pads then. Oh, actually, no, this is some really important information. So Rupes Scholl, we've talked about, Flex and Zvizzer, okay? Who else makes pads? Buff and Shine, I think American company. Lake Country, American company, they're viable. A bit more expensive over in the UK, but probably more viable over in America. They make good pads. There's some of them not too expensive over here. Flexi pads over in the UK, but I just find their pads a bit soft and they don't last. Caveat, unless they've brought any new pads out for a while, but they're viable to have a look at. That's Flexi, not Flex. Who was the chap? Was it Matt? I always used to speak to a chap, Australian chap, you'll be watching. He's obsessed with pads. He's a lovely bloke. He was always going on about Gekatech, because whenever we spoke about pads, he was of the same mindset as me, right? And I'll explain that mindset in a second. He was always going on about Gekatech, because they manufacture 3M pads as well, like your blue waffles and your greens and your, you know, that you use with the Perfect-It, you know, line of polishes. Very common, but they're not particularly cheap, and they're not that great. They're all right. I wouldn't use those though. Not as good as this stuff. Similar price as well. Body shops don't know about any of this. They just always use the 3M pads because they just don't really care. Okay. Now here's the thing. Get as close to the maker as you can, because this isn't telling you anything you don't know. Life is all about buying and selling stuff, yeah? And like in the cosmetic industry, there'll be a cosmetic company that make moisturisers and makeup, and then they'll sell those to a distributor in a certain country, or sell them to brands who formulate stuff, who sell them to other guys who then sell them to distributors. And then suddenly when you go and buy a bottle of moisturiser, it costs like 40 quid. That's because there's about 6 or 7 businesses involved to get it to you, you know. And it's like that. And it's a bit like that with pads, you know. There's foam manufacturers. There's about 6 or so large global manufacturers of foam for various applications. Companies like Dunlop, there's one of them. There's about, I had some of the other ones written down. That's how sad I am. They produce foam and they sell foam to pad manufacturers, mainly. Some pad manufacturers might make them, like Scholl or something, even though I'm not even sure if Scholl make their own foam. So they sell to the pad manufacturing companies like Scholl, you know, and all that sort of stuff. Scholl then make the pads, stick the backing plates on them, you know, try different cuts and different sizes and all these different texts to try and get you to buy it. Some of it might be useful. The foam is the important thing. They then sell to other brands. And sometimes they can even sell to brands which you think are pad manufacturers that I might have mentioned, that don't actually manufacture anything. Then those companies can sell to national distributors, who can sell to online distributors and resellers and wholesalers, who can then sell to you. And you've got, you know, all these steps in the chain. Every step has to, when they sell this product, has to make a bit of a margin. And the end result is a piece of foam that you're paying 15 quid for. So getting the cost down can be really important. And going closer to the source obviously gets you better prices. But the closer you get to the source, the more places you've got to order from and things like that. And yeah, so I tend to buy all my stuff from the distributors. But I still want to get good prices, and I still want to buy stuff from people that I think are kind of making it, I think. Don't we all? So there's a little thing on pads. Now, foam. Oh yeah, so we also, it's important to use European foam. It's better quality. Even some of the old Chinese manufacturers will import the European foam because the Chinese foam is it's not very good. So always find out where the foam's being made. I would typically avoid Chinese pads, although I've said before, some Chinese pad manufacturers aren't half bad actually, they're all right. But they've cottoned on this price thing. So if you're buying it from China, you want to be paying pennies, and they're sort of about 10, 20% cheaper now. So I would recommend you get European foam. Everything I'm talking about here is European foam as well. Zvizzer, Rupes, Scholl, all European foam, as far as I know. Now, what fails on pads and what causes pads to fail? Hopefully you're taking in some of this information. Most of you have gone by now. I've just got the intelligent people left, which is the ones that this video is for. When you work foam, you know, you put your foam pad on a backing plate and you're working it, you're putting a lot of energy of the machine through the foam. It's sometimes sticking to the panel, and all that energy then suddenly builds up. But generally over each polishing set, the pads get hotter and hotter, and you're working the surface of the pad in different directions, especially with dual action polishers actually. They can sometimes destroy the pads the quickest. So keep your power down, keep your pad clean, keep it well lubricated with fresh polish and all that sort of stuff. And keep your pressures down, keep your machine speeds down, be mindful of heat, be mindful of panel temperatures. That will help prolong the life of your pad. Historically, pads would fail from misuse and building up too much heat around this hole, and you'd start getting lifting of the pad here, or when they were hot, you'd rip the pad off and it would tear here. Okay, so that was the first point of failure. Pads have improved a lot, and the glue I find is much stronger, and that doesn't seem to fail there, or as quickly as it ever used to. So that's really good. Just peel them off quite carefully. Use a little Rupes claw tool, or just be careful. The next point of failure is, historically with pads, is the more you use them, they start to delaminate around the edges, and you get little crumbs coming out of the pads, and then you get chunks and divots missing. Then those cracks and divots start to spread, and your pad starts to disintegrate, and it's time to throw that pad away. Okay, so that's how pads wear. These pads from Scholl and Flex are much better on that front. In fact, I find it really hard. If you look after these these cutting pads especially, and you swap them around, they'll last for a hell of a time. Hell of a time. That's why I recommend them. So in theory, the Zvizzer Thermo Pads should also be the same as these Shoal ones, or maybe even better. So these are definitely viable. John, can you run a test and do this? You know, put a machine on there and sit there polishing till it goes. No, not really, because it's not an accurate test. Because you're going to overheat the pad. So really, you need to use these pads sensibly, and then use them for like however long it takes. Do some full polishes on cars and see if they break up and deteriorate. Normally, a pad, if you're cycling your pads, they can last for years. If you're really looking after them, they can last for years. But if you're using them as a professional day in, day out on cars, you might find a set of 4 pads, you could potentially destroy them in a week if you're polishing every single day. You know, after 5 cars, for example. I think you could get more out of them personally, but it depends what you're doing, doesn't it? Put in the comments what you feel about how long they would last like in that scenario. So very difficult for me to test this. It's going to be something that I would only know over a long period of time. We've talked about pad failures. Let's demo these pads in action now, guys. Now what I'm going to do is I'll probably go with a mid-range pad. So we'll take their white pad. Now, you're not going to want to go and buy all 6 pads, are you, in a set, because it's too many to maintain. So I'm going to give you a quick shortcut. You'd want, that black pad is too soft to do polishing with, finishing, you know. You'd finish with this yellow pad unless it was, you know, for 99% of the time, that feels like a pad that you could just put a fine polish on and polish the car, although it is quite stiff, but it's fine. Then you might want to just say, right, well, I'll have the hardest cutting pad in there. So the minimum pads you could have would probably be these 2. More often than not, it's nice to have 3, so you could have like the white in the middle, like that, go buy those 3. Or you could just perhaps say, well, that's the difference in those 2 is not much, so I'll just go with the green and the purple and stock 2 sets of pads, etc. Every one of these you've got to get. You've also got to get your little mini ones and your 3-inch, so it can become very expensive. So some people might like to go with a range of 2. One observation, like I mentioned before, the pore size is very similar on these pads. So I'm guessing that the actual range of cut is not going to be as dramatic as you might find as if you were going from like a yellow Rupes to a blue Rupes, which is extremely aggressive and has big coarse pores on it. So let's take these pads out the way. And we'll go with this red one. That'll do. Put this over here. Don't put it on your paintwork, Jan. I've got to put it somewhere. I've only got one hand. I've got to try and get this pad on here with one hand as well, and I can't really see what I'm doing. Look at that. What a great job. So these pads can be used on a rotary polisher. They can be used with rigid backing plates and flexible backing plates as well, these flexible backing plates are nice for just taking out kind of sanding marks and heavy cutting when you're using a rotary, you know, and you just put your polish down and just lean and just work backwards and forwards with the rotary. Not that I use that at all much. I do everything with this nowadays. I think it's just a bit more idiot proof and won't pull you around as much and sling as much and all that sort of stuff. So I've given this bottle a shape. We're just putting a medium cutting compound on here. We've got a bone dry pad. Bone dry. I don't know if this pad, I'd imagine this pad is closed, open cell I would imagine this pad is. So very few are closed cell. So I think if you imagine you've got to put a bath full of, I've talked about this before, haven't I? Full of, you know, plastic, what this thing is, and you somehow pump it up with air. That's one of you told me this in the comments, and it creates all these bubbles like an aero bar. If you keep pumping in the air, I don't know how this all works. It'll be some chemical thing. Someone will know. Eventually, the bubbles explode and make loads of little chambers. That's open cell. If you just create loads of bubbles but they don't sort of pop, that's closed cell. So it doesn't let anything through, if you like. It's not like a mesh. You get what I mean? It's more like an aero bar. So open cell the polish tends to go through it more. closed cell, the polish will stay on the surface more. When you cut the closed cell pads, you'll create loads of open cells, won't you, on the polished surface. So it's less porous though, guys, the closed cell. And the open cell tends to, well, I don't know actually. I don't know. I haven't used enough. The only closed cell stuff that I used was the old Lake Country Hybrid Force pads, which were fantastic. They bloody discontinued them. So I'm just dabbing this around with one hand. That also stops. You see, I get a bit more polish on the face of the pad. So that also just stops me doodaring. Now I want you to see this. So just bear with me. Well, don't drop that thing. Don't drop that. Right. Hold on a second. No, that's no good. Oh, Jesus. Right, I'm going to move this. My tool. If this falls over, I'm in trouble. I'm pulling this. Ah! Things I do for videos. Should have thought about this first. So you're going to get a nice view there, guys. Look at that. Look at that view. Look at it. You see it all? Yeah, you can. Okay, so let's just demo these. Don't want this spinning around. We just spread that polish. We'll just spread that and we'll go up to speed 4.5, magic number. And don't worry about any keys or jeans or any of that. If you haven't worked out, I'm a cowboy. You already know. Here we go. So I'm just going to work these pads, see what they feel like. It's nice and stiff. Dense. I'm pushing down quite hard. Yeah, really interesting. Just want to switch. That, for the second most polishing, softest pad, if you like, is quite a dense pad, but the more you use it, it will soften up a little bit when you get some heat into it. I just want to flip over to the most coarse, heavy pad, the grey one. See what that's like. It's going to be a bit more juddery, a bit more bouncy. I don't think that's a massively aggressive pad though. Just see what that's like. Let's get a tiny bit of polish on there. Because of you, these things I do. But because of you, come on. It's a polishing bottle. Whenever anyone invents a polishing bottle that doesn't like get the old farts, you know, let me know. I'll buy it. Right, let's just give that a little twist. Yeah, a little bit stiffer. Not that much difference though, really. Just feeling a little bit more vibration. Because of you. Just biting into the panel a bit more, isn't it? Just go nice and slow. The polish to do the work. Because of you. Interesting. It's interesting. Most of the outside of the pad is doing the work there, which is always the way with this polisher. But normally you don't notice that so much. It's interesting. Stop using the word interesting. Yeah, so really guys, these Zvizzer Thermo Pads could be very, very good. Could be very, very good. Could be. Put in the comments if you've used them and you notice an improvement on durability. It's very unlikely that Zvizzer are bringing out a pad range and saying it's 5 times as durable as a normal pad without some you know, confidence in that. They've done something to the formulation to make it more wobbly. Sorry. And less cakey and breaky, which is interesting. So I suspect, even if they were only double the life, they'd still be worth it, because the original Zvizzer pads are £8 compared to this being about £11. So I think if I was a Zvizzer user and I had loads of Zvizzer pads, unfortunately, you've got to cut over at some point, but I think I would start cutting over. Would I cut over from my flex pads at the moment? No, I wouldn't, because I don't know if they're any better or not. What I do know is the flex pad, there's a lot more difference between each pad in the range. Like this is very fine poured, whereas this is like really, really coarse and a lot more, that's really coarse and a lot more open, you know, on the cell. Same with the Rupes, there's a much more variance, whereas the variance in this range seems less, definitely less, especially with that pore size. So if I could have any feedback to these Zvizzer, sorry, it would perhaps be, don't just change that, change the pore size. But maybe they have. Maybe I'm just talking a load of old nonsense. That's, you know, without me doing any real research and going just by the information that I've got in the box. But yeah, these are definitely worth showing to you guys. And this is what it's all about on this channel. We're showing you stuff so you're aware of everything. And from watching this video, I hope you come away with it with a little bit of an idea about pads now and what I've been saying. And you might, the only ultimate way for you to know is to try some. Just buy one or two. Then, you know, buy one Rupes, buy one Zvizzer, buy one Flex or a Show Concept and have a play around with them and see what you like. The Show Concept Ninja pads are quite good as well, but I'm not sure if they have the full range, size range with those. So there we go, guys. I really hope this was an interesting video. The thermo pads are available from Into Detailing in all sizes, but this box set is not really available anywhere now. There'll be one or two perhaps with that company called ECA, but they'll have gone. The time that I shoot this video, they'll be gone. If they've got 5, they'll be gone now. Trust me on that. So really now you're down to the release, that demo, that little offer is gone, which is a bit of a shame. You imagine if I'd done a video on that when they come out, I think someone would have watched it and gone and bought the whole lot, every box in the country, then sold them on their website for like 40 quid or something. Anyway, stop talking. Thank you for watching. Really impressed with the Zvizzer stuff. It's a viable brand and it's very viable for pad choices, and you should check out these pads. Take care. See you soon on the Forensics Detailing channel. 28 minutes, not bad. 28 minutes to do my equalizer. 19 minutes, 26 seconds. Don't do humour. Adios, Doug.